Welcome the viewers to the 73rd Energies of the Day. First, I'd like to announce some things to my own. We're partially not reachable because we have maintenance works on our servers, because we got so many requests. And this is again the point to the donations. We got server costs in our original homepage, so that we can offer that. So we please you at the homepage bewusst.tv. There's a account and a PayPal account where you can donate things. That's the first. Alexander Wagand is with me. We have experienced many things in the last weeks. Many things going on. Let's start with the energies. Can you say how it feels? Is it boiling? Well, indirectly, you have said you have the feeling it's boiling now, and I think you're in the trend. Always more people realize that it becomes unoverseeable. The day before last time I said the elephant is in the room. And what we could now have seen when we have opened the eyes, it's how it even works with closed eyes. Because we stumble up against the elephant with closed eyes. In the outer viewings, there's many change. The energetical layer behind, we can just watch. We have a very active sun now. Yesterday we had a flare that really went into the highest category, and accordingly we can observe other things in connection with the sun. It happens to the things, the news that are happening. There were earthquakes. Not only Nepal is a big subject, there were other theories that maybe it was manipulated with technologies. Is it something energetical, the earthquakes? Not only there, also worldwide there are many movements. Yeah? Or is it human-made? It would be, even if it would be human-made, it would be still an energetical expression. Even if those people who press on the earthquake button would do this, what would let them press the button? We have to look at it in more differential ways. I've got more the impression that those earthquakes, those strong movements, fit together. They are a form of expression of the one and the only quality of change, energetical quality of change. Tibet, as you said, is a special subject. There you have maybe more. There are many ways to think of artificial influences, or Nepal was it. And if we deal longer with this, we realize that we almost know nothing about what happens. And also those artificial forces that keep artificial structures in life, they are also powerful, and they would like to show to us many things happen that are not as we believe. This being so powerful, or saying they are so powerful, this powerfulness, they show them to us in tricky ways. They can make earthquakes. It is in the sense of those who demonstrate a power to the outside. This is a basic clue. We can watch more things in the future, but many things dismember of those that are still believed, and that people have to have built this up, that other people believe it. At the end of the show, we can speak about how we deal with this, and we see many things that can be exciting emotionally if we invest into it. We could complain about many things But we can still be manipulated over emotions, and it's important for me. If I have no television and no newspaper, I wouldn't know about those crashes and catastrophes. It affects me only over the media, so I can question how it's part of my real reality, and I can distinguish or take the time. What is my reality and what has nothing to do with me? Then we don't need to invest in this very deeply. We get feelings that we have to do something about it, to donate or to do more about this. So they manipulate us emotionally, and the important thing is that we don't let us be manipulated at this level. Maybe other things in our lives now are more important. And we don't perceive many things that happen directly around us, because also there we have very strong filters built in. Many things happen maybe in the direct surroundings next to the door of the neighbor, or behind the door of the neighbor, and everyone's shocked later. Yeah, maybe someone's 3 days dead in the room next door. Yeah, this happens permanently. This bandwidth is expressed by that. I want to add, on the one hand, there's this link with what we call global development or global commitment. We see it when the subject of the refugee streams. They teach us to be responsible for what happens there. Yeah. I remember an ad in front of a clothing shop I've seen, and they had written, with every buy you have the people in Uganda or whatever. And they suggest us that we not only have this commitment, but also have to deal, to act with that. And we realize we cannot act in many parts on this. So the information we get is partially only a picture that we get. The second aspect, in respect to consciousness, it's very interesting. We live in a time that many things happen to us in a shorter time, and there are more impulses present. So someone who, as a shepherd in earlier times, stood on the field, he also realized things happening without having read a newspaper. But this multitude of this big amount of information that we get is incredibly more than being naive imagination of the time of the shepherd. This is an expression of the acceleration that we get in. Many things happen in us, and I said we are just made flat. We just cannot do anymore in many places. We are we get so many impulses, and it's the time that's much energetic, and most impulses are attempts of manipulation somehow. So we can get in the first news now. We dealt with it in the last show. It's the German wings crash, and many things still to say about that. We see many things don't fit at all. If you regard this, you can question many things. What really happened, and is this something that is just or mostly used to excite us emotionally? We can go to emotion, and new laws come out as a consequence of this against terror, whatever. I have some examples. This is an interesting picture that was in the Kölner newspaper one day before the crash of the Germanwings plane. This is a Lufthansa logo. Germanwings is a daughter enterprise of Lufthansa. And yeah, 23 is a certain number, and people say the crash would have happened before. Many newspaper are predated. Yeah, also some newspaper news are predated. And 1 minute after the crash, they said there are no survivors. Normally, you cannot say that 1 minute after that. And no one wants to take on responsibility. Everyone would have more time granted until they evaluate that. I want to bring some other examples. I've got some more from German wings. It's only clues. You could do no show about that. It's something where people deal with. Maybe here you see they have seen the one wheel of the plane, and if you closely look at it, you can see the number of holes in the wheel, and compare it to an Airbus 320, how they look. You see that they totally look different. This is a short version, but people say this is no a wheel of an Airbus 320. If you search long, you see this at an old Lockheed Galaxy C5D. I cannot say this officially, but people do this. They research very fine. This is a special thing about this time quality. People ask questions at once, and have many questions where there's no real easy answer. And I can add, maybe we have a time that everyone, meanwhile, in the smartphone from everywhere can access information that have an enormous amount of disinformation and of good information. And this is what this time makes so special, and puts us in front of great challenges for ourselves to have to assort to what is, in my perception, closer to the truth, or what shows me what leads into the right direction, and what's a great fake, so you could say. This is a big clue for us that we learn to distinguish and to feel, is it so, is it so? We cannot just absolutely say that, but sometimes the first impression is important. And many had, in connection to this crash, the feeling that there's something wrong. Another clue, I looked at the passenger list of the Germanwings machine, and on number 127 there's a stepbrother of Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Stahl. He's on the passenger list, but he did not fly. He flew 1 day before, and I know of people that he had not booked this flight, because it wouldn't have been a suitable flight for him. And the interesting thing, there's a death obituary for Sebastian Stahl in the newspaper. You see, it's strange. And Sebastian Stahl lives. The story that goes through the media, he almost had gotten into this plane, is not correct. But this obituary, although he lives. There are many hints that where you don't know what they mean. I looked at the Facebook site of one who should have died. Normally, if I would have been dead, people would have posted something on my Facebook page, but on the page of this woman there's nothing. No entry of a friend, whatever. Pity that you're away, or a candle. No, Alexander says it's not, they cannot post something to this because of security measures, but don't know. I want to be careful. maybe something totally different has happened there. And people who are not dead staying on the list. If you look at the Facebook pages of those people, partially it looks that they have not lived at all. I want to tell another story where you can say it's a staged event. The Sandy Hook's massacre. There are videos in the internet that over hours analyze really what has happened. There were players, actors that have also been at other events. And the movement of the surveillance cameras, it looks like the school was not opened. Yeah. And you can Google Sandy Hook staged event. There's a video staged, an event that has not really happened. Like in the Boston Marathon, there were actors with blood or ketchup or whatever. And have shown event that was artificial. And there was a video with a journalist who said there are those staged events that are not events that didn't really happen, but were inscenated from front to back to provoke a reaction with the people and push something through or ask how people react. I don't want to say that it's the same with German Wings, but there are many questions. And this is the hint, and everyone can research for himself. Many people went emotionally deep into this because those were German students or pupils, 16-year-olds and whatever. You can look to their Facebook accounts. It's interesting. I don't want to say many more things, but it's what does this with us if we feel affected emotionally and maybe those feelings are put in the wrong direction because they are based on something that's different than reality. I don't know. This is the hints to German Wings. I cannot say what happened. But there are many, many questions that are not people are drawn into certain emotions. This is the thing. Yeah, I want to add something. I didn't want to interrupt you. What you just said has touched so many points that some of this are worth to be regarded again. Maybe your hint to stage events, to say what we call parliament or government, it's a staged event and nothing else. Partially with certain free spaces or courageous directors that say just do and improvise, and others really describe things that should happen to certain ritually. This is not only in Germany, this is worldwide. So the surprise is not really big, but here it is becomes visible in an area that normally you would not connect to those that you can see. It's no surprise at all. To say it clearly, there are many produced things. We gave a clear hint. What you said, Sandy Hook, it's known to me. There are many people who researched on this, but it is still very small and it's closely under the surface. The real big cheatings are incredibly bigger. I just want to, because basically, Joe, it's so the attention of people is drawn away in some parts, but on the other hand, it's only this. You can see this incredibility of the deed. It's so weird. You cannot imagine that. And if you say I cannot imagine that, then you cannot imagine that. And then you get many offers to that you can imagine it better in the newspaper and so on. This is what the media present you. The offerings. See it in this way and this way. And in that moment where you open the eyes and really look around you, you can realize there are many fundamental things we don't put into question and that are totally different. And we say, wow, we live in this moment of recognition even already in a totally different world. And we are not so hard to grasp anymore. So here's the clue to all new enterers. Those examples here should neither be examples for singular cases. So look, on this day this and this happened. But those are signs for procedures that we can find today and that in total show us here is something like a trend. Here energetical forces show and many pieces in many different ways, and we see that the wind that brings the tree to movement as well as the washing on the terrace, it's the same energy, and it's the same energy that happens in with the finances as in society and in politics and other aspects. We talked about living in a theater play since a long time. Many people now even realize it's a theater, and even now I leave the theater, say, well, it's a shitty installation, always was, it's so boring. But in the theater play, there are it's like a theater inside of the theater and many levels behind that. And for us, it's important not to say we know how it was, but for us it's that we realize that it's a theater and that many things are staged and totally different goals are pursued, and we as the viewers should just sit in the theater and wait for the third or fourth act and not realize that it's staged. But we do this work, do these shows, so let us not be drawn in so big that we don't have to be so excited about those things anymore. Because like Sandy Hook is not correct at all from the start. A terrorist should have killed children, but that this was all staged. There were no children killed, and their parents did not really cry, but there are actors that cried in front of a camera. We cannot prove it here, but this is not decisive. It's just decisive that we wake up and not underlie the illusion so much that all that is said, it is this way. Yeah, and it has a special quality too. If you deal with those subjects, you can get many insights that things are not really well, unless something laid into the place or taken away. That a whole construction is totally artificial. Yeah, it's not like a movie or whatever. It's not imaginable for many people. How can this be possible? It needs so many people who know that. But people who deal with this, it's not. You don't need many people for this. It's so you can. The old example has deserved it. Like the mother of all inscenations is the 11th of September. Many people ask me how it would be possible to implant such a memory into the heads, because if the real happening would have been a totally different one. Well, you can watch it maybe at a car crash that those people talk to each other what they've seen and write it down, and you realize how a story changes and develops a life of its own, and this life of its own can be manipulated by, like in the crash scenario, 3 or 4 people standing artificially, and they say, have you seen the black car? Well, I've seen it. Yeah, me too. And others said, yeah, I don't know. I've seen something. And after some hours, all agree to have seen this car or something like that. And this is the human structure of perception that just plays us a trick, and that's cleverly played with that. I just want to give this hint because so that we get to a point that's enormously important. This point that I know that I don't know anything, or I realize that I'm confused. If that happens, then it's great, because that's the prerequisite for, without have been conditioned before, or to view things newly. If I mean to know something already, then it's a filter, and many aspects don't get visible for me anymore. Let me shortly point to the example from physics that light is as well a particle as a wave. And they argued very much. I want to give the point that I'm not of the opinion that this is the truth or not about the light. Those are just different models, and those models of the science are both provable. So light can be a particle and light can be a wave. And they found that it's dependent on what the scientist expects. So the watcher becomes part of the scenario, of the scientific scenario. And this is unthinkable in the nowadays scientific structure that needs a cause and an effect, but it's normal in the esoteric view, because you're the part that just brings the thing into life. Without you, there's no life, and this cannot be grasped by reason. And I say it doesn't matter. Courage to be confused is the best prerequisite of this time. I want to steer back a little bit. I want to see how little people it needs to inscenate something like this. This is an example from the Voice and Counter Voice newspaper from Switzerland. It first needs a high-ranking secret agency worker who inscenates it, and a second worker who has the access to surveillance data, who searches for so-called terrorists and so on, and they lead wrong traces, and after the deed there is a research command where they belong to, they who did this belong to the research team, and they get killed, and then it gets to the press and whatever. And if a chief researcher would be suspicious, then he would get killed too. And 3 to 4 people know about this all. So this is and I say it's even easier. You know, Joe, the installation that we partially see of small artist groups that, for example, in the train have a performance. It's more a small group that's enough, used to inscenate something, and all that had been there will agreeingly say this happened by itself. Yeah. This is our way to bring order into what we watch, but it has nothing to do with seeing through. There's another view that is needed here, and we first basically have to get used to that such things are possible. And our perception is not presenting us the reality, it's presenting us from own conditionings, own imaginations. A man who is fearing a dog will experience a scene with a angry dog who is pulling on his leash totally different than someone else. And the right audience you can get it by choosing the right location where this all should take place. It's so easy that you're just wondering. We could do a special show for those things, that you can grasp how easy it is. That is, you cannot deny that it's possible. You've got many news. Yeah, I started already. It was a good entry. It's just some weeks ago. We just see the density of events. Yeah, as a clue, that the one or the other one says, so German wings, we had heard it everywhere. It's not about the event. It's about the basic structure. If you look at such a scenario, or the Estonia ferry, or the 11th of September, or another event of this quality, it's important that you see the structure in its form that's always newly presented to us in different forms and facets. And there are unanimously patterns. And this can be an opening to a door behind which what is much more. There are 3, 4 great dramas in the world that are published in many varieties, but basically it's much easier when you get it down to the drama. Happens here. 2 clues that should be pronounced. The one is what we just said. If we speak of the world, there's just they always mean this artificial world. We can relatively easily acknowledge it. It's no earth government. So the earth gets you back to the earth, so what is basic. But the world is a complicated thought construct. And this thought construct world is since kept in place since millennia. And so the theater is called, it means the world, yeah, and this what you should interpret, like the Bild newspaper builds you according to those events that you have taken as your own thought structures. Okay. This is how it works. I have a present subject that's also works through all newspapers, and this is the spying subject. Yeah, that's an evergreen at Bewusst TV, because at our show, because we addressed it when the NSA subject come up, and they couldn't deny that we were spied on. And this was not very new at this time either, but through Snowden, it came into society at once, outside of the scene that you called, that they drawn into a dark edge, like conspiracy theorists and so on. Now it's the version 3.0, where the German secret office, they, on behalf of the Americans, spied on other, you cannot say states, other companies. And Merkel stated at the first NSA scandal, where they thought they could maybe get out of this issue, she said, as spying amongst friends doesn't work at all. And now, how, I want to say it very, on behalf of the existing structures, it's also amongst friends, or at least those called friends. And that's a subject that doesn't play such a big role here. Yeah, I got it from a primary reason with me, because here they explain it, that it's good and important that it happens. In the Frankfurt Allgemeine newspaper written, spying, no reason for complaining. with an exclamation mark behind that. And the NSA has, over years, spied in Europe and in Germany with the help of the German National Secret Agency. But you should not complain about this, and they explain why. They explain the spying of the United States for our economy is justified in our interest, and no industrial spying. Germany is one of the biggest exporters of security goods or weapons and infrastructure to Russia, China and the Arabic area. We need these exports, and it's a pity we need them. They are part of our wealth and our system and stability in Europe. But they are dangerous. We sell goods to dangerous forces. And then the next sentence, Russia is aggressive. Dot. Yeah, we have an explanation here. It's not important that this secret agency story is understood. It's not about that. It's important to realize what they say to you here is a thought concept, and in this special case it's like something vomited out as a thought concept that should keep you further on agreeing with what that is obviously not working, obviously not correct. And thousands of articles build up something like an opinion, what's in really conditioning, and keeps you stupid and keeps you from seeing the world as it is, but that you should interpret it according to them. So like the emperor is naked, all realize it, and now the newspaper comes and says it's good that he's naked. So he says to show how open and free he is. No, the nudity of the emperor, like in this fairy tale, it stands for his powerlessness. It stands for his totally not above the people standing sovereignty. The emperor represents like a power, and here the power of the USA is protected. We have a well-dressed Obama, and need the naked Merkel. Don't need to worry about the naked Merkel because Obama protects her with a dress or whatever. This is the example. Here it's important they explain us how the world is, and the stronger you have been intellectualized, the stupider you are, the longer you have studied, the more you can understand this, because you think in complex and insane thoughts and make complicated models out of this. It's nothing to do with reality. It's enormously important. If we can transport this message here, it would be great. So this kind of idiot stories cannot ripe anymore. Have the courage to see the news critically. He has no view just because he's an author at the Frankfurt newspaper. This is a bad kind of journalism. It shows how far we are. And I said, don't buy this stuff and throw it back if they send it, put it in your letterbox for free.
Und seid kreativ.
Aber die Zahlen gehen zurück. Wir haben ja schon oft gesagt, dass die Medien wirklich... Yeah, be creative. We often address that the media get a bigger problem, like they are financed by the system, on one or the other hand.
Okay.
And we will see things. Here's this news. It's from the Frankfurt magazine, Frankfurter Allgemeine, from the intellectuals sheet of the elite. Oh, spying? No reason to worry. The Americans, they are the good ones. Yeah, now it becomes better. It's from the Welt news. It says, oh God, did the NSA help to spy on German companies? And the affair gets close to the Chancellor. How could this happen? Again, we experience that they staged something. They inscenate things according to certain rules, and certain areas have to stay taboo zones to keep the whole thing up. And if you have to move into this area of taboo zones, then you're affected. And then there are committees of inquiry, and then the politicians are really out of this again, and they can act as before. And here they prepare the readers' attention. We look that it's really not correct, and we will look what happens. We will inquire on what happens. Yeah, and we will good that the media at least are critical. Yeah, we are satisfied in this part, if you want to see it critically. Another form of satisfying we will just see. It's from the Spiegel magazine. Secret agency fooled the parliamentarians about the cooperation with the NSA. Oh, who does this? In 2013 they stated it's according to the working according to the law, but they knew it better. So this is a laughing stock and a total mocking. On the one hand, they show they protect the picture on the parliamentarians. So they had been deceived. If they wouldn't have been deceived, they would have said this is not allowed. This is a total laughing stock. If they speak of law and order here, you have to ask which kind of law is meant here. And we will consist that we cannot find it. We find it in a totally different place than we suspected, and it has something to do with occupational law. And we see here that they protect this area that's probably not infected yet. So the German secret agencies are infected, but the parliamentarians, they have been fooled. Well, I say they could have known it. And here they say, according to one secret memo, that a memo that is classified as secret, they stated that the cooperation would work according to the law. This is the question the parliamentarians asked, is this really according to law and right? And if the answer comes, Joe, yes, then the parliamentarian is totally innocent, because he would rely on what they say to him. And here also from Ms. Merkel asks, is this all right according to a rule of law state? And if they say yes, then she did everything right. There is no self-responsibility in this whole structures anymore, and this gets obvious and loud. They shout it into our face. And this news is, this background why I brought it, is still much more even in it, and this ridiculing aspect, we should realize it, and we should let it become realizable by not buying this newspapers, send it to don't let it away, send it to politicians. From German economic news, this headline is Revenge of Merkel. EU wants to control national secret agencies. The EU wants to build up a EU Counter-Terrorism Center, ECTC. It's a great story. You don't know how many groups with 3 or 4 letters there are. You can be in the biggest group and someone rings, hey, I'm in the 81 ACDC, and now, my dear friend, I take everything with me, and you get me a coffee. And this is a story with which such structures, they make repairings necessary, because I can abandon every structure if I put a level above it. It's not about that here. Here it's about that the European important security forces say the member states, or you can say the member states, the EU is an association. The member states would have the main responsibility for their own inner security, but they are not able to maintain it up. So this initiative means that the EU will get the data of the national secret agencies, and according to the youngest to the news researchers, it could be against Merkel. So but this is ridiculous, because Merkel is totally unimportant. Here it's about where do which information go, and in which ways they're made available. And the EU is a construct of the Americans and the British, of those who just prepare those structures since decades. And it's easy to read, and here it goes. You don't have to practically think about the singular services, but you have to get used to here the rules are made, like in Brussels. Nobody has elected this EU Parliament. There's no legitimation except that they association, according to their statutes, they can make their own laws. And here's the hint to my association seminar. I do it the last time. I have already done it when this show is published in Oberstaufen. It's no accident that the EU and many big structure themselves and organize themselves like an association. And here they present it to us, and that's enormous. Miss Merkel doesn't want to do anything here, and revenge for Merkel, if this would motivate the EU, it would be terrifying, but we can be satisfied because Miss Merkel doesn't play a role at all. We see the position of Miss Merkel, you just have to look at it. Merkel's real name is not Merkel, she's named Kastner. And here the theater play is like usual. The actors have different names than the role they play. And here on this picture you see who is in charge. And she's like the little pupil. Where will we go today? Finally, to this scenario, I have a news that's interesting because I have Volksbetrug.net, peoplestreason.net. It's the Heute show of this. They say Germany is the branch of the USA and assisting murder. I think it's a satire show that published this. First, and it's obvious, the powers are presented in different ways in the media, and there are critical tones also towards the USA in the media. But that should not it still belongs to the play, like the wrestler says, you assaulted my mother and I kill you. It has been staged before, and the next year they change the role. And this is what we can watch here. I brought this news from another reason. I basically want to say something to the Heute show, this satire show and critical dealing with the political development. The Heute show follows an American role model. This is the only kind of political criticism that takes place in television or in media. Obama is shown where he sits on a farting cushion, and people laugh about sayings of politicians, but there's no real constructive criticism, and made harmless again, and the whole scenario made a funny context. And what remains in our heads, it was funny. It was not suppressing, but I have laughed. It was funny. What here happens is not funny. In no way it's funny. And those forms, in that we get presented pseudo-criticism, are really an instrument of making those things harmless, belittlement. Many people think we can say everything. Yeah, well, at the king, the fool could say, and the king had a fat stomach. And all were excited how free you could talk. What's harmless can be named, but what's unoverseeable can be called if it's packed in a funny staging and some funny sayings. But this is a form of stupidification, no really true thing. Yeah, I love to watch this show, this Heute show, but then you are really terrifying because it's politically totally... I cannot watch it at all. And I can see... I wanted to talk about this many times today. This was fitting, because this show for this news for itself is a hammer-hard news, because they pronounce a truth that 5 years ago very few people, conscious to very few people, but today it's presented. And then, dear Joe, to conclude this, it's when it becomes natural. Well, it is this way.
Okay. Gut. Als ich das letzte Mal hier war,
the last time I've been here, I have, and I want to say it directly, I have made a little I went to the a mall, a modern mall in Bremen, very modern, very stylish, very American, big center. There was a food court.
Food court, ja. Und dort war ich beim letzten Mal und bin dann auf dem Rückweg auch noch gewesen.
And on the way back, I went to
das ist das zweite große Einkaufszentrum hier an der
Weserpark, another big mall.
Habe ich dann in diesem Weserpark, der inzwischen
And there
worden ist, eine Informationsstelle der Bundesregierung vor.
I found an information stand of the federal government. It is a big exhibition, and there I brought something. When you go shopping, it has effects. Way of legislation. So here the citizen is told how the laws are made. It's very complicated. And this is the first reading, and third reading, and the second reading, and then agreement, and the signing, and then all that is shit. Bullshit, idiot stuff, totally nonsense. This is show, this is staged. Rubbish. It is total rubbish. I just brought it to tear it apart here and to show where we already stand. We stand at a point where the so-called government makes publicity, advertises in the mall. And they have more stuff to offer. Look here. History of the German parliament. Is there inside how many lobbyists are in the parliament? 2,000 should it be? Then the book would be thicker. I can't imagine. 3 times as much as parliamentarians are lobbyists, and they can go in and out and have their desks directly inside of the parliament. Yeah, but they have nothing to say too either. They are just the speakers of those who have to say something, and the speakers, the mouthpieces of them. And here you show how many efforts they do to make publicity. When I went through this mall and discovered this stand, there was a man sitting in a suit on a chair. I went to him and said, "Are you here for the stupidification of the people and propaganda?" And he said, "How do you mean?" I said, "Are you here at this place? I have many, many questions to you." And he said, "No, no, no. I have nothing to do with this." And I said, "Yeah, that's just you can just go away. There's nothing good to read here." And I brought this. This is the best from the children's world. Joe, show this picture without saying something. Just let it stand for itself. The Children's Commission of the German Parliament. We have rights, stands on the transparent. Children's Commission, we have rights. So ridiculing, that cannot be more insane. This is your, these are your rights. We have the claim. We have also rights. Most people who take this paper away and don't realize it, and they give it their children to learn. And the child says in school, "Well, I have learned something. May I say something?" And he gets an applause and a star. This is so sad that you either can laugh about it as a counter movement, polar counter movement, or just cry a little bit in front of you. I don't know if I take it to my library. I think I've got too little space for such stuff. But I can top it again. Interestingly, I'm always someone who goes to the centers without a bag, and I come out without a bag. And this is a hint. Look how the economy is going well. Look who has bags. Not so many people. I have here brought a survey. There are opinion polls that the government organizes. And here's a big opinion poll. Maybe you can read, and I read another, as you want. Maybe here just we start with this. A people comes to rest. A people. The Pegida demonstrations, it's a little bit older news. The expression of being unsatisfied with the political system, and there's a growing number of Germans in their own country, they don't feel at home anymore. This should it be. Incredible. But this is not right. This is fooling. The representative question for the people shows that the basic opinion is more positive. They are confident with the democratic structures in the country. It's so absurd somehow. It continues this way. This is what the propaganda ministry tells us. Be clear, this has nothing to do with reality. Well, you want to read something? I have this here from the feeling of responsibility of the upper ones. In Germany there's a consensus that the society should have kept together socially, and the state should be responsible to prevent that a part of society falls back. And there's a big readiness for the upper classes to recognize and represent the interests of the lower classes. There are big social differences are a factor of risk for positive development. The big majority says that the life quality would be better in countries that limit social differences. But the majority has no equal society model in front of their eyes. So here is the ideology of making people equal. It sounds just to many people, but this is not what they say. They say we are equal, so all who are a little bit more intelligent, they automatically getting pushed back in a way that they express it through quota and so on. They prune them back, and it's equally unjust for all. The headline is not really. The next story has it inside. The borders of propaganda. Against the impression in the user comments on the internet sites on German mass media, Russia is seen by the population as aggressor and main guilty for the conflict in Ukraine. Against the impression of the user comments, the reputation of the Russian president is accordingly reached a deep point. The German-Russian relationships are only regarded by 8% as good and very good. A clear majority of 58% of the Germans speaks for a maintenance and a sharpening of the sanction of the West against Russia. And here we see in which way and how ridiculous and unscrupulous propaganda is being made. And the question is put, what does this prove? It's just who I have asked and who can be founded after such year-long stupidifying strategy can estimate such a situation. It's just incredible how here certain models are being made fixed. And it's interesting that the business with the Americans and the Russians can run on, and we say to us, they say to us, we can make sanctions against Russia, which has economic effects, but the Americans don't keep to this themselves. There's another news, I brought it because just to show that today you could summarize the current news under realizing propaganda and ridiculing and seeing how propaganda works. And the ridiculing says they see us as children or as slaves. And here a news that refers to Sandy Hook, the school shootings. Here's a news from the Investment Watch blog. Page where you could not expect something. It's official. Police were ordered to stand down and let the Baltimore riots rage out of control. So the police should have taken back to not to stop those riots. Even if it went under control, they should admit that it went that way. There was a plan behind that. I assume that they would have more violence potential after this. And this brings us to the situation in the USA, the bigger picture. This has many levels. Some hints I want to name now, because they are on the long term that we already shared, make it notable that the next act is beginning. And we're on the beginning of the next act. What they mean with Baltimore here are the riots, the unrests, especially of the black population, against this new people being killed. And a boy had been arrested, and they had broken his bones, and he was dead at the police, and the riots unloaded. So we realized certain police cars were put into certain parts of the town, but no policemen, and there were no one who protected those cars, and they had been set on fire. Yeah. And more strong pictures in newspaper, burning police cars, screaming people, and so on. It was really something going on. In the same context, we often pointed to that they weaponized the police more stronger, partially weapons that are from Iraq, partially from Afghanistan, that they've drawn away from there and provided the police with this, tanks, as you say. And there had been a big action that had taken upon a scenario like an uprising of the Texas people. Jade Helm is an American military maneuver that from the 15th of June to the 15th of September should take, and in the frame of this maneuver, Texas should be the primary enemy that should be defeated. And this it's like a thriller, but there are people who criticize it, and even Texas says we will not admit that here a police state is being made. They use this exercise for police state. It's difficult to say if the military operation Jade Helm 50 and the conservative American, as the politicians think, they would occupy parts of Texas, or if it's against ISIS, or if it's a pre-step for the New World Government, or just a military exercise. I want to add something to this, because the subject has so many layers. On one hand, we must say such a scenario had already taken place in the past. It's very important. The Civil War, as it's called in the USA, was nothing else like as an economic war that through the so-called federal government that had been also in place at this time, so the government above the singular states, what we experience in Europe now, had those time something like a confederation of states, of independent states. Texas was one of the states that relatively late joined this union, like Florida. And this confederation of unions had a problem that not all had the same economic power, and they consisted that the South is so much richer that it leads to problems in the North, and they forbid the South to do certain activities, to plant cotton restrictedly. They restricted the planting of cotton that came from the North. And there was the constraint according to slavery. They tell us till today Abraham Lincoln would have freed the slaves. But this is nothing could be more wrong, because slavery in the North had been in the same way as in the South. And what we find in the ghettos in the North, it's from the consequence of this politics. What is also important is that there had been a war after Texas and other states exited the Union, and was a bloody war with millions of deaths, and babies had been nailed on the doors, and it's a war that has been incredibly cruel. And here's the cruelty of the state when someone tries to exit something. So Abraham Lincoln is totally differently represented in the schools and in our schools and in America as a historical figure had to offer in fact. So here's a current situation. Many of those states see the danger of a police state and don't want to, don't want to participate in this anymore. Yeah, after they had put this uprising down, we have a construct as we find it now, when now we have a union that is not limited to the continent of USA. Maybe you have Hawaii too, regard them as a state, and they have claims there, and this is no free union, though it's formally read in this way. But here I get to the point that you spoke to. Here were frictions in the last months, in the last years. For example, there was a case that the federal institutions, so US government, the representation of a company USA, for those who know a little bit more to say a little bit exactly, And they have sent people to Texas to push certain laws through, maybe to decide about where wind power plants should be made, where they should be doing fracking. And not often those messengers of the federal government were thrown out with the hint to the free sovereignty of the state of Texas. And this led to frictions, and here incredible things going on. Partially federal people were sent, were imprisoned for 48 days and then sent to the next prison to make obvious we see us and we have an understanding for the reality of our state. Here we can see who is feared by the state and what is feared by the state. And Texas is another specialty. They have weapons. And they don't want this either. One of the news was about the Texas governor Craig Abbott sees this critical because they want to. We don't let us be disarmed, he said. It's very complex. You see many things. Jade Helm, through negative reactions of the population for the Jade Helm military exercise. So it has not been put through in some parts of Texas and Colorado. Not enough voices in Congress to prolong the Patriot Act. There are not enough votes. This is another news, but it fits in here. I have some news that together show that the singular states see the danger that the Obama government or the central government, the US government, wants to make a police state out of the USA. It is a police state already. And not since yesterday. It is a 100% police state. It had never been something else. Never. And that's not clear to us. It's good that you say it. We ourselves, in our own view of our history, get into the same structure. So in search for our freedom, we get into the next level of illusion by force. We start here in Germany, that we say, well, we're here in a strange construct of law. Then we find out what had been before the World War II, and then we had Weimar, was strange too. There was no sovereignty either. Then we land in the emperor's realm, and then we say, we had rights as people that had more this seeming. But if you want to proceed further, you see that even there you had a little bit less constraints, but you find the exact same structures of the system. This goes far and far further back into Rome and whatever. And the definition of police state is something that you maybe can discuss to get clear. Of course you can say that, well, if you got certain freedom still and decide on this in its parts, then we don't have it anymore. It's only a matter of interpretation. In the moment where others constrain you and constrain your freedom, there you have no freedom. And the constrainment of freedom goes longer back, much longer back than we think. And what they shout now, attention police state, can only be shouted because they are so far already. And the people basically, what's already happening, they sell it to us bit by bit. In the time of, we have a time that things are getting conscious now, and people waking up here and there, it gets more conscious than 5 or 10 years ago. Yeah, clearly, this is the central thing. What you say now doesn't exclude the other thing totally. It's just two levels: the level in the play and the level that contains the bigger stage. All that's happening now happens because a change is in front of us. And all that take part, if they take part or just prevent it or accelerate it, they have this function that this scenario can run in the way it should be. So the Civil War, if you say the Texans, they don't want to drop their weapons, it's their conflict potential. it will happen what has to happen. Maybe the Texans will play an important role here in form of a very dramatic scene, maybe a scene that seems dramatic and then will relax totally. We don't know yet. For the outcome, it's no role, because the outcome in being conscious needs many, many little steps until the big illusory can be seen through. For the Texan, of course, it's a big difference. If in his part, where he unconsciously plays a part, should take the rifle in the hand, or it just puts a flag up and sees how the federal agents will withdraw again. What I see here is a conflict, an artificial structure, and its instability is seen through. And they fear this instability. And for those who the strongest live in the illusion, we have rights, we are free Americans, it is an illusion. They get uncomfortable now, because this illusion falls apart. And this time it should happen, they say this way, and we can watch it. And my summary is, things are moving in the United States. There is strongly played with fire in certain parts, like the situation with the article you read. And on the other hand, there's the preparation for a distraction of a bigger scenario that in many parts gets visible, and there we get to now. The economic development. There are some important hints there. In America, the Walmarts, you see the big chains, like they're not really comparables in Europe. They're big shopping centers where you get everything. They should be prepared for crisis situations. 5 or more are closed. Imagine you go to a real market and we close for 5 months. You can hardly imagine it, but in America it's this way. Walmart takes a big part of the logistics for the military. These are my information. And from there, Walmart is very strongly connected, and there are big common interests. Here can wonderfully organize, and Walmart is a master of just-in-time organization. Walmart has been one of the first that really in the moment where the last hair shampoo bottle what had been shoved over the scanner, automatically the order for the next delivery came. This works perfectly since years and decades, and Walmart is in central places located, and in the areas of which you spoke, the situation is a hint that they can maybe distribute ammunition or heavy weapons. The stores are big enough and they're closed, and this from one day to the other one, but they are not empty, they are being used. Police standing in front. This is just a hint that many things are working, going. And now you saw on the Economy Week, the Wirtschaftswoche newspaper. This one's better. Bloomberg, chaos at the stock markets. Bloomberg terminals crash worldwide. On Friday, there had been a veritable technical chaos at the stock markets. So Bloomberg, the most Bloomberg trading did not work in Asia and Europe. This is an this Bloomberg terminals. This is the tool for many professionals, not a tool for the amateur. Also the big German banks work via Bloomberg terminals. Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, is he still mayor? Meanwhile, could not be mayor anymore. He was, as the multi-billionaire, a big and important factor in organizing informational services around the stock markets. He had been a real size. And what happened here, you quoted rightly, here many people were affected at once. They could not deal anymore, trade anymore. So there are about 50,000 people who use those services, and 9:20 a.m. everything stopped. The banks, the traders who used the system after the crash, it was not be possible for the people participating in the markets to trade. Later, the service recovered, but everywhere from Europe there came complaints that there was more crashes, and MarketWatch announced that it had lasted long, the crash. This is a big thing, and we talked a lot about power failures, about energetical supply, and I want to say to the new enterers in the day's energies, it's not old news. The old shows have subjects covered that are still current, and this energetical supply, this is a central element now. We have artificial structures. Everything is based on that, and the artificial structures have to be permanently supplied energetically. And how dangerous this can be, you can just see in the example of a nuclear power plant. It does not go out if power goes off. There could be chain reactions. But before the power failures, if you just imagine that you have a company, or even dramatic, you're director of a prison, and you just have to take care of security. You need energy, you need people who take care of things, you need food. You're permanently dependent on this energetical supply. If one aspect falls away, there's nothing to drink anymore, then you got chaos at once. Or if there's no electricity anymore, and this after some minutes, no computers work, maybe your technical director comes and says, so we have problems with our emergency system. The cells go out, or the doors don't open anymore. This complexity is not conscious to us anymore. This is for all aspects of artificial supply. If it's the financial system meant by that, the stock system, power supply, all that needs each other. And if only one aspect falls away, it can have devastating consequences. There was a big power failure from nothing, and no one knows what had happened. So here they speak of this chaotic state. Could be caused, a worldwide crash could be caused, panic could arise. What had happened here at the 17th April of 2015 was a real big event, happened on a Friday. Good. You can, you didn't know? If hackers were behind this failure is not known yet. So it's important. Normally they would expect in such a system, it's clear, it would be no hackers. Yeah. I don't want that the third one actually could appear, give the impression that my system is not safe. What's this? So normally they would say there were no hackers. But they say if hackers behind the failure, it's not known. The US Foreign Ministry didn't state if Vladimir Putin, have they found a passport or what? Vladimir Putin could be behind. Such speculations can just efficiently be made when the servers work again. This as a little joke aside. This is a real hard thing, yeah. We didn't perceive anything of this. The farmer on the field as an insurance employer in his office didn't realize that. But for thousands of bankers, this was an interesting day. But that's the interesting thing, that these structures, that basically that's artificially, that also the farmer on the field would be indirectly affected by the prices of crops and so on. Not only he comes home in the evening, can withdraw no money anymore. His card doesn't work anymore. Yeah, where they striked in Potsdam, first the Bahn, the railway, then the local traffic company, and the money supplier drivers said were on strike. So if you're there, you can get no money anymore. Yeah, we speak about how this so by accident. I brought this paper. I mentioned it in my presentation about gold and silver. I had discovered it at the hotel before. I have brought it with me. I have not bought it. Economy Week, Wirtschaftswoche. The insane comeback, strong dollar, weak euro doped the economy. But how long anymore? The insane comeback of the dollar. How you can dope a system, only someone can understand who's a little bit distorted. There's an easy explanation, of course. The European goods are cheaper with a weak euro. So it becomes easier for American investors and more attractive to buy German stocks or German car. If the changing currency rate is not 134 but 108, 104, as we've seen. But in the moment, we realize a little bit stronger euro again. So this news is not that up to date anymore, but this is nothing else but a scenario. In scenario, we see a structure that brings much into movement, and this is something I'd like to address now, because it's a hint to all viewers. The hint, attention, take for serious what happens now. So here are preparations made that you should be put attention to this and maybe react. The Time magazine, Zeit magazine, the Times proceeding very fast. Who's got much money in the banks now should have taken measures before. I got many news here and want to present this multitude of news. So the basic news I brought here is an excerpt from News from the 1st April of 2015, a little bit older. I brought it because it's other news build up on that. EU Commission plans a general cash money prohibition from 2018 on. This is they fear crimes through this. The financial ministers welcome this positively. And preparations are made. I shorten the sentence a little bit. The Commissioner President Juncker had already agreed, so they want to abolish cash completely and only paid by credit cards and wallets as offered now by IT companies. So you got a card, there's an amount stored, and they can practically delete it if you put your card in and have not been according to their will. The bank, the financial industry complains that the cash money would be very expensive. The providing of cash money is expensive. So we get an explanation, and the studied one can nod his head and say, all right, that's how it is. So this money costs so much money, they estimate up until 12.5 billion. And I personally estimate 12.72 billion. It's a ridiculous number. Ridiculous stage play. And you could save so much money if by doing these things. And here, look at this one sentence. This is so stupidifying. Wonderfully. And transparent if you look closer. The quote, EU Law Commissioner Martina Reicher, it's unacceptable that people go to work and fear robberies. Yeah, this permanently happens. You go to work, yeah, you could say it's unacceptable that people go at 8 p.m. make a pizza. This has nothing to do with cash and money. Nothing. It's just unacceptable that people go to work and have to fear robberies. So why people who go to work are endangered? It's a signal to those who read it. We protect you. You are the diligent ones. We take care of you and your what you want. It's hard to get more stupid than this. I just don't read more. I need a little bit more headlines. Maybe the newest ones.
Es gibt nämlich eine neue entsprechende Regelung, die man in Griechenland beschlossen hat. Kennst du die schon?
There's new regulation in Greece. You already know it.
Man darf, glaube ich, nur mit 5 bis 5 Euro.
You can
Nee,
only
also
until
so,
50
du
euro.
Rechnungen
In Greece,
nur noch bis
you can
maximal
only pay bills
70 Euro
up till
bar bezahlen.
70 euros
Also wir
in
haben
cash.
in Spanien beispielsweise,
So in Spain, for example, or in Italy,
Frankreich
or in France, we have such constraints, 1,000 or 2,500 euros. So it's the 2,500 in Spain, I think. But in France, there's a regulation with a limit of 1,000 euros. They already put this into law. And now, presently, they have 70 euros in Greece. Yeah, it would be just enough for a cappuccino and dinner. Yeah, you can dine maybe alone or 2 people. But the restaurant would get criminal if you don't pay with a credit card or EC card. Why? It's easy. This way they can wonderfully A, collect data, and B, on the other hand, control these money streams completely. You are not owner of a certain amount of worth. You just got just in time the amount of money they grant you to use. To add something to this, in Italy there are controls also for foreigners who in restaurant have paid, leave the restaurant and have no receipt with them, no bill. This is an offense for them. You have to get a bill. Yeah, in Italy there's many things interesting. If you have a car with more than 2,500 cubical centimeters, the financial agency can control everything at your place. So the big car dealers who have big cars, they have big problems because they sell those cars. Otherwise they would be stopped permanently. That's only one example. So it's important for the viewers now. It has to be very clear. There are no valid laws for such things. Very clear. And this is wanted. So if I would need valid laws, I have to keep to a certain procedure, or those laws would have to so if I don't need those laws anymore, then I do what I want. So the Germans are partially courageous because they say, show me where this stands, show me where this is written. But in Italy, they have, I don't know if this spreads so much, but they do it. They to demand the police to show their passport. And the Germans, they should they swallow things so easily, but I don't think so. I think of the opposite. So here, such a form of manipulation in us can let us resign. If you look to France, and if you think the France would be put up with everything, this is not correct. You go another reality. The French only don't put up with things if the unions admit it and promote unrest. But in other parts, they put up with everything. France, just yesterday, it's actually my last headline, my last news. I just do it now instead of later. No, I don't have it now here at hand, but many things were totally abolished that with the protection, they link to the protection of the people. So without a signature of the judge, they can spy on you without signature of the judge or according to the law. Before such things get normal, that they do things without law. After the inscenating of Charlie Hebdo, after the production of Charlie Hebdo. Charlie means in translation idiot. So I am Charlie. Get to the cash money, back to the cash money. There only 5 euro bills for the customers. They have such a news where they propose this. The financial branch explores ways. There's a new proposal, only 5 euro bills that they can wonderfully constrain the payment. It's you can buy chewing gum still. Yeah. A friend of mine experienced this in Sweden. At the airport, he had no credit card, and he only had a corporation card that has not been accepted either. So they want the private movement provides. He could buy no chewing gum or water at the airport, although he had cash money. And this possibility to totally control our energetical supply can take on forms that in this form we can't imagine anywhere in the consequence. It's much further than we think. The Bader Bank is quoted here, experiences abolishment of cash money. I don't know if they can put it through, but I want to say before, still we can recognize this trend. Financial companies want to accelerate the abolishment of cash money. So in German trades there are 30,000 cash readers, and they plan 300,000 more cash readers in German shops. Central banks should abolish cash money, says Harvard economist Kenneth Rogoff, who proposes the abolishment of cash money. And here something interesting comes. Here we have to put a view on, because in his he explains it in a different way. He says, so the central banks can without problem push through the negative interest rates. In other words, the devaluation of your assets. So the one who has saved 100,000 can now, with the negative interest rates or an interest-free depositing on the bank, can watch how his money just through the devaluation of money, not inflation, but devaluation, loses it. And the chance to get this money back will not be allowed if there's no cash money anymore. So it's important that this gets clear to us, so it goes on and on. They accordingly speak of penalty interest on other parts. If they say the IMF, penalty interest can only be made without cash money, that the money on the accounts, the electronic money, devaluates and there's no stable cash money anymore. The banker says cash money should be abolished to save civilization. This is one of my favorite news. This is clear. Civilization is that I have many credit cards, this is clear. You can say alternative-less, like Merkel says so often. Only if the banks, it's a critical voice again about the subject, but it goes on and one news in the direction of Switzerland. The Swiss politicians want to abolish the 1,000 francs bill. Why should be clear? You can, with a 1,000 francs bill, with 100 bills, you have pretty much money in the pocket. If you in USA see if there's blackmail or something, you need a suitcase, because the biggest bill there is a $100 bill, and often you cannot use it anymore in the USA. Would be very suspicious. If you have a $100 bill, wow, 100.
I have to check that.
I have to check that.
Ask the manager.
First ask the manager. And here in Europe we can, in many parts, not pay anymore with our biggest bill, the 500 euros. Why? That there's no chance that you your money, to say it naively, in a comfortable way, can keep liquid and variable for you. So we realize where it goes, and here it goes on, and I could read many news here. For example, there's this one as last one. There's already decided on or met decision. The Commission wants that the citizens should open bank accounts everywhere. So here they want to make the prerequisites for the abolishment of cash money, so that everyone has the right on bank account. It's naive what's behind that, but that's really the prerequisite for that. And as the last news, EU prepares guideline for the flash access on your banking accounts to not let the banking crisis on the crash. Read again, this is the grounds for that. To not let the banking crisis in Europe flow into a crash, the forced participations of savers are much faster executed than in Cyprus. In Cyprus it went fast, very fast. And the weekend they can see, and the saver sees only on Monday morning that his bank account was loaded. Forced participations, we know it with forced like with this real estates, if they make forced loans on real estates, and the state claims those parts to have a reset. This happened after World War II. They said we have values, those are the houses, and those values are hypothecated. And who now lets his money on the bank? It's not your money on the bank. You already talked about this. This one needs a cold shower, and this could come very quickly. And by the way, I found the French news. The end of the freedom, it's called. It's from the 6th of May 2015, this is today. The police state returns to Europe. No, it's also not true either. It had not really been totally away. It was sometimes a little bit nicer, really protecting policeman, and now it's a mean cop that is no consideration. It doesn't affect our policemen, but the system behind it. The French National Parliament constituted a law with which the civic rights are dramatically constrained. The secret agencies that can spy on everything, and this could be an example for the EU, and we already seen how the secret agencies, who wants to take them over, the secret agencies, is also the EU. We realize in high speed everything flows to Brussels, toward Brussels. And they spy on everything, and the industrial spying is no problem, because these are the good ones who spy. So it shows that EU also belongs to the Americans. It all flows, all information, all means, and possibility to stay over here. You say remain. Can you talk a little bit what remains to us? Yeah, I can. Those questions is put. We still got remaining possibilities to improve our position, not completely to clear it, so it can be really clear. It's one of my entries to such a subject. Who wishes a carte blanche? If you get stopped by the police, you draw the card, and there stands kiss my ass, and then he knows it, says thank you, sorry, and this everyone wishes such a card, and this card is not doesn't exist. I think someone could claim this invalid, the one who has signed it. Maybe this has to be clear. We can only improve our position by knowing the still existing legal options there are, and they cannot skip them arbitrarily without the damage happening to the powerful. There are in certain places conflict potential that you can avoid because it's not necessary. It's much for them much better if the slaves have the freedom, the feeling of freedom, and don't need that change, then they stay there. And this is a trick that they want to control us with, basically. And this is the areas of law that are still an obstacle, and we found those approaches in many parts. First, in our own legal position, that we first have to know to get that in many parts we are brought into law rightlessness via voluntariness. If you, for example, don't pay your electricity anymore, then the power company will switch your power off. This doesn't work so easy because there's a superior law. They still want to remain it in the illusion. Yeah. In the future, there will be electricity counters that can be switched off from the outside, but it's not there still. So the power company has to go to the court, other than the financial offices. Then there comes a title, and this title, if there's a title in form of a verdict, you are demanded to admit the toleration. And there you see that voluntariness plays a big role. And on the other hand, I considered something interesting. I saw of the voluntary jurisdiction Hamburg. You know what's their purpose? It's foreclosures. Those are voluntary processes. They need the illusion of voluntariness. A little bit like in the fairy tale, the devil needs the signature under the contract before he gets a soul. It's like you have to say it 3 times. And this is a trick that's still used. If you know that, you can, in many parts, get very uncomfortable if you don't comply here. This can be very interesting in many parts, but it's no guarantee. In the interests where they're just doing what they want, you cannot defend anymore, because they're doing what they want. They draw the power to themselves without legal basics. And the second aspect is you can use certain structures, like a structure of association. Here's the possibility to use a structure that has a very good law protection, and this law protection, they use it inside of their system too, so they cannot, it's not for them easy to withdraw their laws because they themselves are needed at other parts. So the big headline is knowledge is no power, but it helps you to realize on which parts you still have a little bit more freedom, a little bit less tangible. You are a little bit less tangible, and you are maybe not worth that they burn their fingers with you. Those are the clues I summarize in this part. And in the summer, I have a 3-day meeting only for this subject, from A to Z. This is the last time. But they confirmed the subject to me in so many pieces. It's so important for many people that it belongs there, even if it's a transitional solution. That's about the subject, which are my rights, how can I put them through, which are the subject of association. They also talk about that. So here at least everyone can get the necessary impulses. There I can look, there I maybe find something. There are many things to be found. I myself searched on some parts for years, and on others I found solutions fast. Things are changing as I get more knowledge, and if you once understand the whole picture and see that's everywhere working according to the same structures, you have chances to deal in different ways with this, like totally being unconscious, drawn into this. But the time to deal with this, it's always more less It's always less, yeah, because they strongly work against it. For example, all structures that your old laws are hidden. So old documents are being hidden. Yeah, well, you can derive old rights from, because old rights cannot be replaced so simply by new ones. There are originating laws that are have big meaning, and but you cannot prove them anymore because the papers are away. That's a big area. I know someone in India. He has the papers of his own history goes back 3,000 years. So not everything is provable, of course, but the last 1,000 years it's for him. Yeah, and family history. And we have problems finding the birth certificate of our parents or grandfathers. So we are cut off our own roots. This is here a wonderful hint to the many layers. We are cut off our own history and our own understanding in the world, and we are cut off on the whole commercial level of our opportunities and possibilities to defend our own place and our possibilities. And those functions are still in some position. Yeah, we don't want to provoke fear here, because everyone can look into their own life. All these things, socially and in outer world, we experience them now by this media, conscious TV. But if you make yourself, let yourself go crazy or desperate by this, it's not the right way. So you just looked into your own life, what I am living on, of who am I dependent, of my landlord, of my bank, of whatever, whoever, just look. What can change? There's this music title, Freedom is another word for nothing left to lose. So nothing to lose, what remains. So this is terrifying. And we wish so much a way of recognition that is pleasant, hope that would lead to a more comfortable awakening, but many people reject those clues, and this dramatic is just because of that. So the imagination, if we don't look at things, we don't make them so big, just leads to the scenario we find ourselves in. We missed since decades to find what's happening. We are living now in a time where our government is also in its appearance very ridiculous. We don't live in a time where we say, well, he's the strongest one in the tribe or the wisest. No, he's the most corrupt, stupid, and adjusted. And this is what we can see. This is our own, a mirror of our own form of perception presented. I don't believe that we have the government we deserve, but we've got the government that at the moment still fits to us. And every single one has to decide for himself newly every day if it's still so. And this only works through looking, not through looking away. It's very important. Another clue to the symbolism. I got a letter, it lays a little bit longer at me, sometimes decisions come later. Christian writes me, they are Feng Shui counselors and they work as a team, and they saw in an article the Ori Tower of Frankfurt, that's the new ECB building, about protests and so on, and they sent me a text, printed very small here, from the Badisch newspaper, and they written, there's this strange formulations inside. There are strange things to regard at the UCB building. But some highlights I want to say from this. The new home of the euro winds diagonally over Frankfurt. Yes, diagonally. The Ori Tower, so the deranged word has different meanings. An Ori Tower is something that expresses instability. An Ori Tower is that you see is you have to watch with a little bit sorrow. Does it stay standing? Is it too diagonally? May it fall over?
Das ist ja mega klein. Das neue Zuhause ist das ist kein normales Bürogebäude, sagt Wolf.
The office tower, says architect Drix above his. The architect says it's a three-dimensional sign for Europe. It's distorted in itself. Distorted in itself. Nothing describes the EU politics more than distorted in itself. That first parted in the length and then had been put together in the opposition side. The ECB, European Central Bank building, looks different from each position. Powerful from the north, like an elephant foot. From the south, like unpenetratable mirrored fortress, from the east like the blade of the carpet knife, and from the west, the most beautiful side, like a thin driller. So this article, we will link it. It's many interesting formulations and many points, clues to a ritual and symbolic level, the level of signs of power, and this different regarding, dependent on the direction you view it, it shows that no one would know the truth, and the one who would state it as an regard as an elephant foot could argue with the one who sees it as a carpet knife. Both are right. The important thing, it is oriented, it is distorted. During the construction, two companies got broke. The building is now too small already, and it costed so much, 1.3 billion euros. One of the most expensive buildings in the world. The big market hall on which area it stands, it's heritage property, big market hall. And it was connected to the new building. The heritage protected big market hall on which ground it stands was renovated and connected to the skyscraper. So big market hall, what it's about business always. All is business. War is business. So heritage property, it's different than for me than connecting it to skyscraper. But here they do it this way, and it's really you have to think about that.
Wir haben ja ein paar Meldungen. Das geht jetzt schon ein bisschen, glaube ich, durcheinander hier, aber es sind ein paar schöne zwischendurch.
Ich bin auch bald fertig.
Klitschko bekommt Adenauer-Preis.
Klitschko receives Adenauer Award. The reward for Klitschko is a symbol for the democratization of the Ukraine. The Cologne mayor said. This is a curious. It's not curious. It fits wonderfully, doesn't it? If you know what democracy is, if you knew what Adenauer, the old German Chancellor Adenauer, and the Adenauer Foundation is. Also an association, by the way. A foundation, yeah, it's a form of an association. Information for the crisis case. Finnish government writes to many 100,000 reservists because of a military crisis. So the action is not against the neighbor Russia. Also a little hint. But everywhere maneuvers are made. A big maneuver of the Chinese together with the Russian is in planning. What we see here is all theater. So please don't let yourselves be here so terrified. You just said it. Here the wrestlers play. That's what's expected by them in the ring. And they push and scream, and big people come and let it shake in the ring. But they need the one and the other one. I've given many clues to that. I can be easily drawn into this whole productions, yeah, installations. I've got some news that belong together well. When some are sent, some show the general development. I've got them because they all show current developments. This newspaper is one thing on the first page. This is a free newspaper, like a Rothenburger district paper. They throw it into the my letterbox. They driving ban for thieves. So tax criminals, shoplifters, and other criminals. Yeah, they summarize them. They should, from 2016 on, also can be punished with a driving ban. There is no legal basis for this, and they cannot tighten a law. Certain draft law would have been should be proposed by Minister of Justice, whoever, and they write, oh, they hit the dentist worse, that his Porsche stays in his garage. They have cliches that are very bad, and they constrain our freedom of movement, so we can be declared as a criminal. You know, in the pizza restaurant, you have not been given a receipt, and now the license is away. You're a cheater, you're a betrayer. You said it twice. You did it twice. Once lasagne, second pizza fungi. And now you're a criminal. And in 10 years, dear Joe, everyone will think this is totally normal. Even if they shake their heads now, we swallowed already worse things. That's put in front of us here now is an incredible limiting intervention in our own, to determine our own life, our own space. And we let, I don't say me, we as humanity, we put up with things by not looking and to swallowing explanations that mental dwarfs have presented for us. Don't want to look into the kitchen of the dwarfs. Such a dwarf is a cynic globalist, Thomas P. M. Barnett, is for the New World Government, had been strategic consultant of Donald Rumsfeld, and is now chief of Wikistrat, geostrategic think tank. He writes in one of his books, the end game of globalization would be the equalization of all countries of the world with a mixture of races. So in Europe he wants there would become a light brown race with an intelligent quotient of 90, the ideal slaves, and he warns of people who would fight against this development. And he says, yeah, I know the arguments of our opponents, but if they resist, I demand to kill them. This is also from the Voice and Counter Voice newspaper from Switzerland. So for whom it's too heavy, those things are very openly available, and something to be something that could provoke fear. And one of the last shows, you told the website where we the estimations of the population developments. I don't know the name of the website now. Deedle.com. After the show, I researched about that. It's an interesting page. You cannot really know who owns the site, but it's no private site. It's not a company that's behind that, not a normal company, but it's first purpose, it's about statistics of military devices, of ammunition, of tanks. They administer it there. There's an overview where they estimate how will the population number develop. And in the last days they adjusted it dramatically. Can you rawly say it? I have not printed it out. I wanted to print it out, but I didn't. So I just want to say it rawly. Everyone can look at it. They reduced the development of the German population enormously. Originally, that stood from 83 million to 79 million. Now they said 50 million. So a tremendous reducement. In the USA, they reduced it even more. That had been, now it's about 60 million, from 330 to 60 million. So here there are many interpretations possible. Still, my hint, also this kind of explaining things, this can be seen critically, even though truthers spread it too. Just another impulse of many. Look what happens, don't have so many sorrows. For scenarios that others provide for your future. It doesn't have to run this way, not at all. It just shows that we are in dramatic change, that those dramatic changes find their expression, that here you very obviously, if by virtue or it's obvious, things are enormously changing. You have some, many things are changing. 5 new harp installations in Norway. Norway stops VHF radio. The ice cap 3D building is for 5-phased antenna fields with each 10,000 cross-dipole antenna in the northeast region of Finland, Norway and Sweden. To the subject harp, it's a wonderful point to another area of subject I don't want to say now. I'm following incredible treason of a dimension far, far beyond everything we just discussed here, far beyond that. And I can not talk about this because I've not been able to take a real picture of this. It's so incredible. It's a little bit in connection to this news. So our imagination, what happens with harp, could probably find a totally different explanation. As soon as I know a little bit more, I can talk about this, but now the dimension is very big. So you make us very curious, yeah? No, I think it takes longer than to the next show. Up until now, it had been the biggest incredibility I've ever discovered, with far behind the others, before the others. I have here brought some newspaper articles I found good. Here's one wonderfully from the Bild at the Sunday. Good for career, colleagues. Just shout at your colleagues, just. This is accordingly clues how you can make career in Germany. Those clues are expression of our total work philosophy. Permanently starts at the sports and school and goes further to. Here's a specialist who says how you make career. Nice is the small sister of shit. Who makes himself unpopular will proceed. Be unpopular but successful, and here we find the information. Always speak to the person of the highest rank. So there are ranks. Before in Indian there were castes. In the castes there were casteless people. The untouchables, they could be killed by everyone. They had no rights at all. And here you can be blatted if you still have one. Maybe we are outlaw ones again too. become really loud or learn from the tricks of the colleagues. Not all colleagues work with fair means. Don't be trusting. If the ambition trainee wants to talk about projects, assertive people conceal information. You can learn. So the Bild paper shows how you have to be a bad people, to be a successful man. Dream of the career Randy fathers. Here you've got the newspaper. Sometimes before the news there's an RTL2, there's the end procedure of Berlin Day and Night, and I shiver because all shout, shit, that's so, that's energy. For the young people who live in Berlin day and night, they show it to them, only on confrontation and shouting, and I just want to grip on that. It's a wonderful clue. I often, sitting at home, thought, oh, I want to say it so often, that the energies of the day are always again. I once addressed that shortly. If you see normal Hollywood production, common Hollywood production or TV production, and the relation of men and women, it's always a problematic relation, where it's about the putting through of power every time, where the successful woman, radically and ruthless, with lawyers now making the man down, and shapes a model for a successful woman. And this model, in the next step, shows its expression in the so-called high schools. The American model, we've had the association, the adaptation in the 60s. We had the common schools, the same model. The most important thing is to be one of the popular children, and you see it in all shows going through. Vampire's Diary, it's a kind of film like that. It's a film that deals with the groups of teenies and gives them a blueprint for real behavior. Become a successful bitch. And then the people are told, the men are told, I want a bitch woman. I want such a woman. She's a strong woman. It's perverted. It's all perverted. And there are models being made, or the hero in the film, that in the phone book, not writing the number but ripping the page off. Is this a role model for me? But he's of course cool because he can do it. He just does it. He does things you are not allowed to. If you would doubt, then the financial police would come and say, just now on the money. Those are the role models from Hollywood they show to us. They live out what we are not allowed to, and because of this, it's role model. We also would like to. Is it the question? Do you really want it? You want to draw the kick-ass car? Today we got another direction, but I think it's good. You just have to listen to how often in the American English the word fuck comes. So not the beep that out. Here it's about I dominate you, I'm above, I dominate you. And this is the term for that in a perversion becomes a sexual, that a sexual act that is based on equality is perverted and becomes a question of power. You can see it everywhere, and this fuck is in the language of the powerful, a very important role. We just do, we can make it, it makes sense. And this is what this quality of the Americans could only anchor this as in our quality. Now it's accepted that they spy on us, but they know it because they cannot. They're the good ones, they're cowboys. I lay the shoes on the table and it's cool, but in reality the creation of pictures you run after, but you cannot put into reality, and other pictures that influence your ideological concept, that they present you success models that you can take on as a super profi footballer or as nerd or whatever. You have certain models and you pick one of them, and so you are. Or you are not successful and become standing outside. Yeah, and how unique, that every person is unique, I say, yeah, we are all equal. Joe. And here on the first view, positive looking formulation is we are not really the same. Everyone lives in another world. Everyone has other fingerprints and eyes, and this is our strength as if working together as a collective. And they want to take this away from us, so that we all work according to the same structures. So here is the clue, the hint to our viewers to live what you are. You are perfect as you are. Even if you are at the moment in confrontation with this, you are perfect. You don't have to be this way. The one is beautiful, the one is ugly. This doesn't play a role, because by this another life, they want to reduce us to a uniformation life, switch us equally, globalize. Fulda newspaper, here a clue, important bridge into the working market. They speak about the job centers, where they convey the unemployed people to workplaces. The working searching people were invited, they say here, to a fair, and then they talked about time work, another time of art of slavery. They invited them. It means if you don't come, there are sanctions, forced sanctions, and that would they presented is so if they work overtime only in an enterprise. And the intellectual here lives, who means to work as an official in a company. He lives in a totally different world than the unemployed one who had who paid in social aid and has no claims from this social aid. Home children scandal. We talked about youth offices here, and here's a scandal from Gelsenkirchen. The leader of the youth office in Gelsenkirchen said they had earned money with bringing German home children to Hungary, and they should on purpose have taken off too many children in the children's home in Gelsenkirchen, and have so said they forwarded them to Hungary with the company, and they got 5,500 euro per child and month for their company, so that they could bring those children to Hungary. And in Hungary there are no, in this home where they brought them, there were no concepts for the children. They just did something, and they could smoke weed, and they did it, and if we didn't want to go to school, we could just sleep on. So, but it could be something sensible, yeah, sleeping on could be sensible. What you see here as a little bit more freedom and free time for the children is more terrifying. That the situation for me is the situation of the children in Africa that are used by the groups there, helping charity groups, or they've been sold to people, to human traders, and to people who are trading with humans. This is a bad example. Yeah. And for the job, unemployed jobs, the job center was closed down due to a software bug. It's like the Bloomberg terminals, but now after the job center had been made, they could not work anymore. They had no
hat bundesweit die Arbeitsagenturen und Jobcenter lahmgelegt. Ende offen. Grund für den Ausfall könnte eine
IT breakdown made the job centers not work anymore. There were probably no hackers who did this, but the whole computer system of the agency for work was put off somehow. And in this occasion there's a thought, those on the upper positions, they speak of the top politicians, top experts. I think they have not really a clue of those technical things. The question is, who has really a clue of those technical things? Are those the other corrupt figures we see in the Casper Theater, or that are those people who we don't perceive on totally other parts, who are on the real switches of power and maybe don't agree with what happens? Here it could be, without we perceiving it, the one or the other sysadmin have more power than we think, just as an idea. It would be interesting. Could run different than they have thought out it would work. I've got something from David Rockefeller. He has the 6th heart transplantation in the age of 99 years. I normally don't like heart transplantations, but he's 99, and other ones would wait for donation organs much longer if they would find a fitting one, but he's the 6th one. Just a little hint that all people are equal and some equaler than other ones, more equal. The one or the other one I could say, but I don't say. I've got a news with me that you remember. There was a hero story of a Syria reporter. He was Richard Engel, and he said he was abducted by Assad true fighters and freed by FSA fighters. There was a news this time. It was a very nice heavy news in America, and they presented this in connection to the war against Assad. And now it came out that he invented this story together with the television station NBC. In reality, he was abducted by US forces, but the abduction by Assad forces fitted better, so they adjusted the story. And in the last month, there was also a false story about an Iraq reporter. And I hope that the permanent drop would make this stone hollow. Here my last news, a transition to, they have a good transition to the energetic thing. The Greece financial minister consults American insolvency lawyers. So it's just a clue who has the power now, that the American officers implement laws in the EU. We often said this, we see who writes the laws here, and we have the subject free trade agreement as a big subject, and we have the special courts replace the still existent kangaroo courts. There's always something on top. They can drive it on top, and still a dwarf is sitting more on top. And now they think in Greece they finally elected someone who does it in another way, and he does it in the same way. The last two news, one is very current. We have now a train driver strike, and the train driver strike should go the whole week, and they are arguing, and this news is from Monday, and I brought it. Be so kind and read the headline. NTV, the heater shouts to the holy war, calls to the holy war. This is the engine driver strike with chef Wieselski. He's the heater, and he calls to the holy war. Has he joined ISIS? No. Can you show the news? What's that for a kind of journalism? He shouts to join the holy war. The one who's heating up. Yeah. And there had already been a strike, and the Bild newspaper, they published a private address of those men. Show him where it goes. There was I don't know how they formulated it this time, and we see how here something is in preparation that possibly could limit the unions in their rights. Unions are somewhere a group that still is not really representing groups not really harmless, that could become uncomfortable. So they exaggerate in a way that the population says, the engine drivers union is smaller. You can use them better, and here it could come in a way that they really constrain their freedoms, and they take this as an occasion. About regulations. There will be regulations against the unions or the misuse of the unions, probably. My last news is from the Frankfurt Allgemeine newspaper. They started with the news that it's good to be spied on, that we should not complain, and we end it with a news that we could think is positive. So they climate statistics surprised. Originally the carbon dioxide emission would stagnate. The surprise. In the midst of the negotiations about climate, there carbon dioxide, they say carbon dioxide is not increasing. It sounds like it would be news that's surprising all people, but in front of all it's a news that shows us they don't let themselves be led somewhere. They show the results, or the results are great, but yeah, of course we should continue, this is no question, but they show how much they attempt at objectivity, seemingly, as this way, seemingly. Here it's about that they always, with such news, want to calm us down, and if it's needed, they show us that they regard things that they are, or give apparent that it's so. In reality, it's only an article that shows how important it is to continue if the climate hoax. We see in the most news how much they are only funny. It's not serious regarding of reality, or what is the word of what is for us, for my life, important. It's not really suitable. This is why we can amuse it, but it's still important. Yeah, it's important. They have have a hint with them, and this hint is serious for some, because indirectly it affects us. Even if this one says, I've got no television, no radio, at once he realizes he cannot get the 1,000 francs, a change of 1,000 francs bill at the bank, or whatever. And once he's confronted with the development, and from there it's not about looking away, gives them no energy, but perceive it and realize it as in its absurdity. And don't let yourself be put in front of this car, in front of this wagon. So in this tradition, we can, if this show with many headlines, we could talk about the energetics. It's very important. How do we deal with those fast developments, these dramatic developments? We have here our, they constrain our freedom of movement. Those are the plans. There are the plans that they want to control us, and many of their plans don't work anymore. and will even less work because many things are changing and consciousness is rising and everywhere things, and not all people are taking part in this, maybe in the financial office or at the police or military. People have to push this through and they don't want this. There are 10,000, 100,000 ways to cover up the truth with lies, but there's one truth, and if this truth comes out, then even 100,000 lies will disappear, then nothing will remain. This is what we have to understand. And this is also an important aspect that with me comes with the example of the fighting of the light against darkness. That's not there. Because in the moment where light comes, darkness transforms. It itself becomes the carrier of light. And the same way, if the truth is realized, it doesn't work anymore. If there are 10,000 or 100,000 lies. And the desperation by which we can realize where the watchmen of the current structures are standing already, they can be read out of every newspaper. There are always some new lies put into to us that don't touch truth at all. We ourselves, in search of truth, should say goodbye to that. The truth has to be adjusted to our imaginations and ideologies. This is the challenge, that to accept the truth as it is, to see all that approaches us as a challenge and not as a good or bad happening. It's a challenge. And the challenge will be definitely there in the next weeks and months. And there's maybe, to conclude this, there are two different procedures that we can shed light on. On the one hand, the seemingly active dealing with the forces. This is that they present to us, and a real dealing with subjects which is not presented in us. Yeah, it's in us. And I mean on the formal layer, even in the outer world, we could achieve more power if we get conscious to certain procedures. We still move inside of illusion, but are in our own interest. So the citizen who realizes, wait, the state doesn't represent my interests, this political party doesn't represent my interests, this judge doesn't represent my interests, once comes to the point where he puts the question up, how can I represent my interests myself? Or at first, who could represent my interests? He will know, and one time he must do it by themselves. It's the outer illusory layer. It's a fight that doesn't have to be led, because in your true reality this fight doesn't exist anymore. But in the illusory layer, it's what nourishes the illusion and makes this process visible now. Here, it's of course be someone who rejects, doesn't comply, puts questions or whatever, should be knocks in you and wants to be heard. It doesn't need any regulations how it works, but you need courage. You need courage to express yourself. Here it's enormously important to me to bring things into movement and understanding what could be misunderstood. In the spiritual development, where we will soon be speaking, we speak about illusions. We say ego is an illusion. It's best temporary limited illusion where it appears a human being and leave this level as a baby, as an old man, old woman. We get a new challenge when I have this, all is in change. But still, what here now is presented to me, this expression of my structure is a wonderful possibility to express the divine, to recapture, re-seize my power, and to say, well, I'm as a human, I'm only here for a short time in this world, but I claim this place that expresses my quality, and don't let others prescribe me in which way I have to be limited that I would fit into their stage play. That's enormously important. If I would make this, after that I can live the illusion through and see it through. But if I'm never myself would have found a perception of myself, then I couldn't run through illusion. So I need the illusion. I would have to dream into this structure that are there before the dream can come to an end. Although I feel I would love to exit, and the moment I'm part of the dream until the awakening happens. And then always remember what you really are, not this one, but unlimited consciousness that makes its experiences here and now awakens up and can take its space and to get to its greatness anymore, every time, every more. But it doesn't mean that you would have to argue with everyone. Maybe you swallowed everything your whole life, and this for 1 week you have to complain in front of everyone. Maybe we don't know. We don't know how your story has to run, or we don't know how the story will go of the one you shout at. This maybe it's an impulse for his development. Maybe he needs that. For our possibility to judge the story of the single one, it's not given, because we don't see the whole picture. So everyone can only see it for himself. It's important that what I know inside of me, that I am, that my expression is, can distinguish it to whatever comes outside of concepts of others up onto me. It's not that easy, but I want to say those things can fall off of me, and what I am myself can express. And we always give clues for that. Fall off, you said. Fall off. If you let things fall off, letting things fall off of you means it fall off of you what doesn't fit to you anymore. Maybe you have the imagination that my father was a soldier, my grandfather was a soldier, I would have to they would expect from me to do the same, but at once I realize during the basic training, maybe when I'm officer or general, I always wanted to be an artist. And in our structures, in which we very consciously are kept strongly, they convey that it's a big risk to give up the structures where you've worked on this, so you are general, you have everything reached. And it requires enormously much courage and a high level of, and now the wonderful thing, where it comes a high measure of self-consciousness. And does not mean I consciousness, not I realize myself as general, but I realize myself in a quality how my self and my complete natural form of expression. This is not only not taught to us, but it's covered up with much effort. And the church says you need us, or you need the Jesus, or you need the whoever to get this access at all. But you have this access because you are already it. And to find this access in you, it's a process that's made hard at the beginning by us searching an explanation in the head, a solution in the head. But the solution comes by itself in you if you don't hold on to what doesn't belong to you. Let everything go that you are not, and you become what you are. This is my hint. The classic mystery cults, it's about who am I? Realize yourself, then you will realize God. It's enormously difficult to go this path because the realizing of oneself through the many levels of nothing, of not self, it's covered up. And those levels, to get through those structures, to understand those structures, is a very complicated process, and it easily leads to that you deal with those levels too long. Let those levels, those layers where they are, they can be there. And let go everything which you are not, and it remains what you are. And it's always yourself, and it doesn't need change anymore, and it's everything happening as it should happen. And this is the way that happens now, to all those incarnations, and in the moment we fight through many levels and illusions, and we just have to do it to consist that this level is an illusion. This one who knows that politics doesn't represent him, doesn't need maybe 3, 4, 5 news, that another one who's still in these levels urgently needs to, I say, to get the kick in the ass, to push him through those levels and layers and let him know, oh, I don't know this anymore. And then we get to the point that you described here. No friction is needed anymore. All this is more ridiculous for me than threatening, but it's only for the one who has gone through this level already. The other who's just scratching at the start has to go through this, and no one can take it away from him. You cannot say behind this it looks so and so. He has to go through this. He has to go through. By this falling asleep, he gets the chance to awake. This is right. Thank you.